This is Gadget Stop 321. In today's video, I'm going to be replacing the nib and section in my Nemosine Singularity, and I'll describe why I'm doing that as I'm doing the replacement. This is the bad one. I got the Singularity a few weeks ago, and I knew that the Singularities had a history of some quality control issues, so I inked it up immediately with just the tiniest amount of ink. In fact, I had the converter almost completely closed, just put a few drops in there just to see if it wrote, and it wrote beautifully. So I cleaned it out, set it aside, and waited until I finished up using the ink in the two pens that I already had inked up. And so it was this, I think this past week, I inked this one up. I was going to take it with me to church to take notes. So I inked it up with an ink syringe. And just like when you put a cartridge in a fountain pen, you have to wait and let the ink work its way through the feed. So I had placed it on a napkin propped up like this so that the ink could work its way down, and when I came back about 13 minutes later, there was all my ink out of the converter and in the cap and on the napkin. And by the way, I don't know if you can see it, the lighting's a little, yeah, that looks pretty good. This is Diatramentus Sherlock Holmes. It's a really nice dark blue ink. I'm not a fan of blue blacks, but this is just a really nice dark blue. But anyway, it had all leaked out, and I had heard or read reviews where other customers had had similar problems. So let's see, the next day, Monday, I got on the chat with Goulet Pens, which is where I bought this, and told them the issue I had. They did a little troubleshooting, asked me if I'd tried different things, made sure that the converter was snapped in tightly. I also, after the ink all leaked out of the converter, I thought, well, maybe it's an issue with the converter. And I put a cartridge in, and the same thing happened. The ink was just leaking out the nib. So they sent me a new nib and section. So we're going to give this a try. And I'm optimistic. I saw in the Right Now this past week, Brian Goulet had his executive assistant was his guest on the show, and I noticed in her pen collection she had 3 or 4 Nemosine Singularities. So this is probably the experience I had is probably the exception to the rule. And I've got to admit, this is my second attempt at filming this video. I was originally going to ink the pen up directly from the bottle, which that would have been the first time ever I had inked a pen up directly from the bottle, but I don't want to put that sideways. I went to put the nib and feed into the ink, and Colorverse is known for, in their small 15 milliliter bottles, the opening's kind of small. That wasn't the issue. The issue was the ink was not deep enough, and this is a full bottle of ink. The ink was not deep enough to make it up to the fill hole. So I'm going to do it like this, and I guess to make sure the nib and feed are saturated, I'm going to squirt out a drop of ink. Squirt a drop back into the bottle. There we go. And then pull it up just a smidge. And then do a little writing test. This is a really pretty, I guess depending on your taste. I really like this green. It's kind of a mossy sage green. This came out, I guess I should tell you what it is. It's Colorverse Interstellar Space. It is one of the 15 milliliter bottles that came out of the Voyager set, little set of 4 inks. Let's see if the feed is saturated enough. And let's try to zoom in a little bit and get focused. All right. I better wear my glasses for this. This is the 0.6 stub. I just love how it writes. I'm spoiled now. This is the first stub nib I've ever used, and it just makes the ink look so beautiful. Let's see, 0.6 stub. This is Colorverse Interstellar Space. And let me see. I don't know if I'm going to try to focus in here. But originally, I was having problems with ink pooling on the 2 sides of the nib, the 2 sides of the fin, and then just dripping out. Let me see how wet this is. It's still writing pretty wet. Let's see. Oh, it's writing pretty wet. You can, I don't know if you can see it really pulled up on the letters. I can see it, yeah. I'm a little concerned. I don't know. I can say this for sure, this stub nib is super smooth. I know italic nibs tend to be a little more crisp, and I'll let you see. The edges of the nib is rounded off, and it's just really smooth. I don't know if I'm going to be able to tell immediately if it's going to leak out again. What I'm going to do, I'm going to set this on the paper towel, propped up. Oh, I'm not in focus at all. I'm going to set this on the paper towel, propped up, and leave it there for a couple hours. The replacement nib drips also.